My name's Ron Grant, and for something like about 16 and a half years I was the kit man, and actually experienced some of the best times with Reading Football Club, or what Reading Football Club have ever had. Moving from what was the old second and third division to eventually the Premiership. But as a supporter, I actually went to my first game in 1946. My dad took me along to Elm Park, and we had a 1-0 win against Bristol Rovers. And from then on I was hooked as a Reading supporter. Over time, what did change was the kit we had changed, the availability of kit changed. If I give you an example of this, we got through to a playoff final at Wembley against Bolton. Unhappy occasion in some ways, but we did. And at that time, the only sweaters I had for the management team, which was Jimmy Quinn and Mickey Gooding, were red sweaters that were left behind by Mark McGee and Colin Lee. So if you ever see a film of the final being played, you'll see that they both have red tops on with a patch where their initials would be, because I had to make use of what we had. You didn't just have a cupboard you'd go to and pull out a kit. There have been some great moments, I say that, and certainly I think the last 20 years has been one great moment if you really think about it. But we had, over time, I've had lows from playoff games. We had a playoff at the Millennium Stadium down in Cardiff when we got beat by Walsall. Very unluckily, that was a low moment. We had the playoff final against Bolton when we got beat in extra time after being comfortable, as it were. And on that occasion, what made me very sad at that time was I had pro players sat in the dressing room at Wembley with a towel over their head and would sit there for about 15-20 minutes and never took the towel off because they were so saddened about not winning that game. I think playing in the Championship or playing in the Premiership, brilliant. You get good teams, big teams coming in with good following. You've always got an atmosphere with the following from teams likes of Leeds and Newcastle. Great moments to have in watching a game of football. I know that one of the things I always had as a kit man was the adrenaline that was thrown when you came out here to see a full stadium and knew you were in for a cracking game, which you've had many of them, I feel, in recent times. And much more than what I had in my grown-up period from 1946 to about 1985, was it, when we eventually achieved something, when we had a record run under Ian Brownfoot. So we've had some good moments, but not as many as what we've had in the last 20 years. I think it's all part of actually growing as a club. Those moments of getting promotion in the fourth division, then getting beaten up for the playoff against Walsall, it's all part of the club growing. And I think I've seen how the people involved in the football club, as they've gained experience of all these moments, we've changed as a club. I sometimes think, I very often heard people say about Little Reading, and we're actually fighting above our weight, or achieving things above our station, as it were. But I don't see that. I think now, if you went to elsewhere in the country and spoke to a football supporter, you'd say, listen, Reading is a club that's established in the Championship, have been in the Premiership, back to the Premiership, and we could be perceived by many people in football as quite a big club. Right? We're not little old Reading, that's how I see it now. At least I don't think we are. Oh my goodness, I think that season when you take the first game against Plymouth, I thought we've got to do better than this, but when we went to Brighton after that game, and there was such a good group of players, you just felt you wouldn't get beat every game. Just for a minute, you actually weren't going to get beat. And when you think about it, that was 10 years ago, right? Now we've got 8 or 9 year olds that were watching that game now, and now at 19, 20, 21, they themselves are adults, you can say, when they started from children. So their memories are going to be that, but we've got to now make the memories for those 10 year olds to take forward in the next 10 years. And that's what the club's about. Having history, right, but moving forward. And I always remember part of that 106 season, one of the things that was actually almost a slogan that was used, we've got to make history. Win the next game and we've got to make history. I argued with Stevie Coppell that we already had history. It wasn't very good history, but it was history. did have a semi-final in 1927. We had got promotion to the old second division back in the 20s, right? But what they wanted history where you were perceived by the nation as having history. We had a mid-season break down in Portugal. Steve Coppell was the manager, and we were in I think it was Barrington's was the a hotel stroke sports complex, right? So there was a lot of football played and cricket and other sports, but we had one football match that was played between the two teams, and the losing team had to get into the swimming pool. And if I tell you this mid-season break was in February, that swimming pool in Portugal was very cold, right? And so the losing team in the game, they went in there. The next thing was, that's not fair, the other team got to go in as well. But if I tell you that both teams then turned on the backroom staff, and all the backroom staff were thrown in there as well, Kevin Dillon, Wally Downs, and then the manager was chased, Stephen Coppell, and he went in of his own accord in actual fact. And I thought, just a minute, I don't know whether they would take me, but I jumped in, and it was cold. It was freezing, right? And I was out very quick, as was Steve Coppell. But that's a moment that didn't involve football, but was the moments we had. Harps mainly scored good goals at Newcastle, right? Now everybody knows what Newcastle, what St James's Park is like, the ground's atmosphere. We're one got and they've shut up the Geordies, right? And he's run across, right? And we always celebrate we'd have a dance, right? Not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily about scoring a goal, it's just, B came over and straight away we're in a dancing, jumping up and down. And yeah, it was a great moment. But I did regret it because we got beat 2-1. It was a bit premature, the dance. I should have saved it until much later. There you are. It was a moment to be remembered. I mean, another moment very similar was here when Leroy Leiter playing West Brom scored. I think it was a hat-trick, memory serves, but I know he scored one of the goals. It was a beautiful goal, right? And he ran across there, and we all moved forward as the bench did. And for some reason or other, he picked me out to jump on, right? Well, he's quite a heavy lad, right? And I had trainers on, I had one foot on the grass, and that foot slipped away, and of course I went back over. And Wally Downs was laughing his head off, and even the gaffer was smiling at me going over on my back. But it was a moment to remember, and I got a bit of stick for it afterwards from lots of people. But Marcus Hanlon was very concerned that I was okay. Yeah, great moments.